Does the Quran ever mention dinosaurs? The Quran mentions so many scientific milestones that it would be surprising to find one missing. So, what about dinosaurs? The reign of dinosaurs on Earth is definitely one of the major milestones that a scientist would talk about if their subject were the history of life. After all, dinosaurs ruled the Earth for 170 million years during the Mesozoic era, otherwise known as the Age of Reptiles. They ruled until an asteroid wiped them out, leaving only one known line of descendants. When the Quran mentions scientific milestones, it does so in one of three ways: directly, indirectly, or metaphorically. For example, the Big Bang is mentioned directly in verse 21:30 when it says the skies and the earth were a single entity that God burst asunder. On the other hand, mollusks are mentioned in the Quran indirectly. Scientists regard these animals as a major development in the history of life because of their adaptability and diversity. The Quran doesn't mention these mollusks directly, but it does mention pearls. Pearls come from oysters, and oysters are a type of mollusk. So mollusks are mentioned in the Quran indirectly. Photosynthesis isn't mentioned directly in the Quran, yet the scientific milestone is still reflected in a metaphor. The development of photosynthesis was a critical milestone in Earth's history. At the time the Quran was revealed, people didn't know about the biochemistry of photosynthesis, but everyone knew that sunlight powered plant growth. Humans had been practicing agriculture for over 8,000 years. In the Quran, God's guidance is likened to light. Following God's guidance leads one to lush green gardens in paradise. Light that leads to green gardens can be viewed as a metaphorical reference to photosynthesis. Nearly all of the milestones on this timeline are mentioned in the Quran in some way. The events in red are direct references, the ones in blue are indirect, and the ones in purple are metaphorical. The Quran doesn't directly mention dinosaurs. However, in this episode, we'll discuss 5 compelling ways that the Quran may have referred to dinosaurs indirectly or by metaphor. But why wouldn't the Quran make direct references to dinosaurs? The first dinosaur bone fragments were recognized as belonging to a large extinct reptile in 1824. They were classified as dinosaurs about 20 years later, which is about 12 centuries after the Quran was revealed. 57 generations of people have lived since the Quran was revealed. If dinosaurs had been mentioned in the Quran directly, the verses couldn't have been understood even by scientists for 50 generations, and probably not understood by non-scientists for another 5 generations. Only the last 2 or perhaps 3 generations out of 57 would even have a chance to understand direct references to dinosaurs. In Surah Al-Kahf, the Quran says, وَكَيْفَ تَصْبِرُ عَلَى مَا لَمْ تُحِيطْ بِهِ خُبْرًا? And how can you be patient with what is beyond your realm of knowledge? In other words, there is no point in exposing knowledge that is so advanced that the vast majority of people would have no possible way of understanding it. The second possible reason for excluding direct references to dinosaurs in the Quran is historical. According to the Islamic tradition, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was taken by night from the Kaaba in Mecca to Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. This is called the Isra. And from there he ascended through the heavens, the Mi'raj. The return trip there and back took one night. This event is alluded to in the Quran. سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده ليلا من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى. Glory be to him who took his servant by night from the sacred mosque to the farthest mosque. When the Prophet shared this experience in Mecca, it sounded unbelievable. His often hostile tribe, the Quraysh, mocked him, using it as a pretext to ridicule his message further. The faith of some Muslims was shaken, and according to some reports, a few people actually left Islam. Today, the flight time of a trip between 2 cities of similar distance, approximately 1,200 kilometers, would be about 2 hours one way. A return trip could easily be completed overnight, and no one would question it. At the time of the Quran, it seemed like an impossibility. Similarly, if the Quran contained explicit direct references to dinosaurs living in the past, those incredible references might have repelled some people and opened the message to further undue criticism. References that are indirect or metaphorical can be just as powerful and clear, offering the ability to convey multiple correct meanings that benefit everyone, regardless of their level of scientific awareness or when they were born. Okay, let's now explore 5 potential references to dinosaurs in the Quran. Here's the countdown. Reference 5, descriptive references, and this is a metaphorical one. The Quran contains many stories of ancient civilizations that were destroyed due to their immoral rebellion and rejection of God's message. These stories emphasize the importance of believing in God and behaving morally, but they may also have a metaphorical meaning. For example, the Quran often draws attention to mighty populations of the past that were stronger and more numerous than us, and then were utterly destroyed, yet still leaving enduring traces on the land. The imagery also matches what we know today about long extinct dinosaurs, which were far bigger and stronger than humans, far more numerous considering the various species lived for 170 million years compared to modern humans who have lived 300,000 years. They ruled the earth, left fossil records, and disappeared completely. For example, أَفَلَمْ يُسِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ فَيَنْظُرُوا كَيْفَ كَانَ عَاقِبَةُ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ كانوا أكثر منهم وأشد قوة وأثاروا في الأرض فما أغنى عنه ما كانوا يكسبون. Have they not traveled through the earth and observed how the end was for those before them? They were greater than them in strength and left more traces on the earth. So in addition to being about past human civilizations, these verses could be metaphorical references that describe dinosaurs. In another verse, that is from Surah Al-Kahf, and how many generations before them did we destroy who were stronger than them in power and had explored the lands? Is there any place of escape? The mention of generations, Qarnan, is very interesting. If read through a scientific lens, destroyed generations aligns with the concept of mass extinction events that not only ended individual lives but terminated entire evolutionary branches, halting any potential futures. But many verses also say that past nations were destroyed because they sinned. How does sinning fit the dinosaur analogy? After all, dinosaurs were animals. Could they sin? People are moral entities. We receive guidance from God, can choose to follow or reject it, are accountable for our actions and decisions, and will earn reward or punishment in the afterlife. Is the same thing true for social structures like ethnic groups, nations, generations? What about business corporations? Can a corporation earn heaven or hell? Nations sin when their leaders show moral failure while using the nation's power or resources, and the nation's followers acquiesce to the sin. Thus, even though a nation isn't a moral entity, it can still be punished for its sins by being destroyed by God. Similarly, dinosaurs are not moral entities. From a scientific standpoint, natural selection does not punish sin. But evolutionary failure can resemble moral failure when species over-specialize, over-consume resources, and become ecologically dominant in unsustainable ways. In this way, even the Quran's reference to populations that were destroyed because they sinned can metaphorically apply to dinosaurs as they became evolutionarily out of step with nature's new order. Let's move on to an indirect reference. Reference 4, evolutionary evidence. The Quran, Surah An-Nur, the chapter of light, provides an indirect reference in verse 45. This verse is remarkable for outlining 4 evolutionary stages for land animals, organized by how they move about at each stage. Let's start with stage 1. وَاللَّهُ خَلَقَ كُلَّ دَابَةٍ مِّن مَاءٍ. And Allah has created every animal from water. Paleobiology tells us that the first traces of life on Earth started in marine settings approximately 3.7 billion years ago. Over the next 2 billion years, more complex life developed, including multicellular organisms, invertebrates such as mollusks, and vertebrates such as fish. The opening part of this verse aligns closely with the scientific consensus that all life on land began in water. After that, the Quran goes on to talk about 3 ways that animals moved about. فَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَمْشِي عَلَى بَطْنِهِ. And of them are those who moved on their bellies. Science tells us that some vertebrates from the Devonian period, such as Ichthyostega, are stem tetrapods. In other words, they had early limbs with digits, but their bodies were still not shaped for life in water, and they couldn't support their weight on land or lift their torsos fully off the ground. Kinematic models suggest that they had a seal-like forelimb and crawled on their bellies. These stem tetrapods serve as an evolutionary bridge between the purely aquatic fish and fully weight-bearing land animals, matching the verse locomotor category. In other words, these stem tetrapods were transitional creatures that came out of the water occasionally and crawled on their bellies when they did. Continuing with the verse, the next 2 stages are وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَمْشِي عَلَى رِجْلَيْنِ وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَمْشِي عَلَى أَرْبَعَةٍ. And of them are those who walked on 2 legs, and of them are those who walked on 4. This is interesting because the verse mentions the 2-legged creatures before the 4-legged ones. Science tells us that the normal evolutionary progression is from aquatic swimmers to belly-dragging tetrapods to 4-legged, weight-bearing quadrupeds, and from them only a few evolutionary lines became bipedal or 2-legged. So swimmers to belly draggers to 4-legged creatures to 2-legged ones. Why does the verse reverse the order of 2-legged and 4-legged animals? The only major group of animals to which this verse applies is dinosaurs. Dinosaurs started on 2 legs. They were bipeds, and over millions of years, some evolved into enormously large 4-legged animals, or quadrupeds. By the late Jurassic and early Cretaceous periods, giant dinosaurs ruled the planet. And as if to emphasize the spectacular size and nature of dinosaurs in this final evolutionary stage, the verse continues. يَخْلَقُ اللَّهُ مَن يَشَاءُ إِنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. God creates what he wills. Indeed, God is able to do all things. So this Quranic verse mirrors the scientifically reconstructed stages that dinosaur evolution went through. Aquatic ancestry, belly-dragging tetrapods, bipedal first dinosaurs, later quadrupedal giants. Subhanallah. Now, let's look at another indirect reference. Reference 3, the evolution of vertebrates and mass extinction events. In an earlier episode on evolution in the Quran, we examined Surah Al-Mu'minun, verses 12 to 14 of chapter 23, and we saw how it relates to the evolution of life, from organic chemicals to the rise of mammals. The first 4 stages mentioned in those Quranic verses began with the formation of mankind from clay, teen, likely referring to clay's role in creating the organic compounds needed for life. The verses continue with the development of protocell droplets, or nutfa, RNA and DNA, alaq, leading to multicellular organisms, mud'a. Then we saw how soft tissue, multicellular organisms developed an outer skeleton, or exoskeleton, in invertebrates. فَخَلَقْنَا الْمُدْعَةَ عِظَامًا. Then we made from the flesh bone. The verse continues, فَكَسَوْنَا الْعِظَامَ لَحْمًا. Then we covered the bones with flesh. This stage is consistent with the evolution of vertebrates, animals that have internal skeletons, or endoskeletons, that are covered in muscle and other tissues, such as fish, amphibians, reptiles, and small mammals. It is also the stage in which dinosaurs eventually evolved and dominated. Finally, the 7th and last stage from these verses is ثُمَّ أَنشَأْنَاهُ خَلْقًا آخَرَ. And then we willed into being another creation. Since verse 23:12 starts with telling us that mankind is from clay, the 3 verses should be viewed from the perspective that these 7 stages lead to the rise of man. Therefore, the 7th stage should at minimum lead to the rise of mammals and eventually humans. So how did God will the world full of vertebrate life dominated by dinosaurs into creation and give rise to humans? From science, we know the mass extinction event that led to the rise of mammals was also responsible for the demise of dinosaurs. Therefore, this verse is consistent with that understanding and marks the end of the Mesozoic era, the age of reptiles, and the beginning of the Cenozoic era, the age of mammals. However, the verse doesn't tell us how the mass extinction event occurred. For that, we have to look to reference number 2, a metaphorical reference. Approximately 66 million years ago, a massive asteroid struck the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. The impact released more energy than 1 billion nuclear bombs, creating global fires, blocking sunlight, and collapsing food chains. This event is widely acknowledged as a contributing factor to the extinction of the dinosaurs. To be clear, many other species that were not dinosaurs also went extinct. But at the time of the asteroid impact, dinosaurs, which were categorized into 2 suborders according to their hip structure, were at their peak of might and numbers. They ruled the land. Sauropodia, or lizard-hipped dinosaurs, gave rise to the mighty T-Rex, and Ornithischia, or bird-hipped, gave rise to the Stegosaur. Does the Quran refer to this mass extinction event in any way? The Quran's Surat al-Fusilat, or chapter 41, verses 9 through 12, describe the formation of the solar system and concludes by describing Sama' ad-Dunya, the sky nearest the earth, as a protective entity that is beautifully adorned with lights. There is only one physical entity that fits the description of the protective sky nearest to the earth, and that is the Earth's atmosphere. Our atmosphere, among other things, protects the planet from solar wind and space debris. When it does, it causes beautiful auroral lights and so-called shooting stars that are proof of the atmosphere's protection. But the very next verse in Surat Fusilat, verse 13, instructs the prophet, "But if they turn away, then say to them, I warn you of the blast like the blast of Ad and Thamud. فإن أعرضوا فقول أنذرتكم صاعقة مثل صاعقة عاد وثمود." So after describing the formation of the solar system, the earth, and the protective atmosphere, why did the following verse segue into the destruction of 2 ancient tribes, Ad and Thamud? The people of Ad and Thamud were powerful ancient civilizations. They built impressive structures and lived in prosperous lands, but they became arrogant and rejected the prophets sent to guide them. According to the Quran, a sudden powerful blast wiped out Thamud, while Ad was destroyed by a fierce roaring wind that lasted several days. Ad and Thamud are often mentioned together in the Quran. In this verse, it is clear that their demise was linked to a single devastating blast that destroyed them both. Other verses in the Quran referencing their destruction also mention earthquakes, screaming winds, and fires. Together, the descriptions of their destruction are consistent with what happens when an asteroid, a long orbiting object from the solar system, breaches the Earth's atmosphere and strikes the planet with immense force. An asteroid impact links all the elements in verses 9 through 13. This again suggests that in addition to being historical accounts, the stories of the once powerful Ad and Thamud also serve as a metaphor for the asteroid collision that scientists call the Cretaceous-Paleogene mass extinction and the subsequent destruction of the once dominant Sauropodean and Ornithischian dinosaurs. Double subhanallah. Did dinosaurs have any surviving descendants? Let's look at reference number 1 to find out. The short answer is yes. To understand this, we need a bit more planetary history. The mass extinction that killed off the dinosaurs caused by an asteroid, the Cretaceous-Paleogene mass extinction, occurred 66 million years ago. but it was not the only mass extinction event that the Earth had faced. Earth's history is marked by several periods when many species went extinct over a relatively short geological period of time. These events reshaped life on Earth and opened the door for new forms of life to emerge. In fact, scientists have evidence of 5 major mass extinctions. The asteroid impact was the last major mass extinction, but not the deadliest. The most extreme mass extinction occurred approximately 186 million years before the asteroid impact and is called the end Permian mass extinction. Scientists believe it was caused primarily by massive volcanic eruptions in the area now called Siberia. However, these volcanic eruptions were not like modern ones in which lava is ejected from the top of a cone-shaped mountain. 252 million years ago, these volcanic eruptions were fissures, long cracks in the crust of the Earth. Lava flooded out of these cracks and spread layer upon layer of basalt over millions of square kilometers. The eruptions lasted for hundreds of thousands of years, producing perhaps 4 million cubic kilometers of lava, enough to bury all of Canada under several kilometers of lava. But there was no Canada back then. All of today's continents were fused together into one big supercontinent that scientists called Pangaea. And the Earth had one big ocean surrounding this one continent. So there were no oceans to buffer the lava spread and perhaps save some ecosystems. These basalt floods literally swallowed forests, swamps, and animal habitats and released enormous amounts of greenhouse gases, like carbon dioxide, into the atmosphere, drastically warming the planet and acidifying the oceans. The violent underground movement of magma likely caused a sharp increase in intense earthquake activity. This combination of heat, chemical imbalance, and geological instability resulted in the extinction of more than 90% of all species on Earth. After the cataclysm of this end Permian mass extinction, the Earth slowly recovered, and in the resulting vacuum, a new group of reptiles began to dominate, the dinosaurs. For more than 150 million years, they thrived in various forms. At first, from small two-legged bird-like hunters to later on massive four-legged plant-eating giants. And as we know, the reign of the dinosaurs came to a sudden end due to an asteroid impact and its aftermath in the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction, the last major mass extinction that the Earth has seen. Surprisingly, however, birds, which had already evolved from small feathered dinosaurs, managed to survive. All the birds we see today are considered by scientists to be the only living descendants of dinosaurs. In fact, the way birds spread and fold their wings has evolutionary significance, and it's linked to their dinosaur ancestry from small feathered theropod dinosaurs, which could fold their arms at the elbows and wrists for balance and agility. This body plan helped birds survive the harsh conditions of the post-asteroid impact world. The ability to fly allowed birds to cover large areas in search of scarce food and relocate to more habitable regions. Their folding wings, inherited from dinosaurs, made them agile and energy-efficient flyers. To recap this history, 252 million years ago, a mass extinction event occurred due to volcanic activity. Enormous cracks in the Earth spewed lava and swallowed up ecosystems and caused a sharp increase in earthquakes, warm temperatures, and acidified oceans. 90% of species died, but this event paved the way for the rise of dinosaurs. After 186 million years, when dinosaurs had evolved from two-legged predators into two and subsequently four-legged giants, another mass extinction event occurred, essentially caused by giant rock hurtling from the sky that fell to Earth and wiped out the dinosaurs and other life forms, wiping out a total of 75% of the Earth's species. While other mass extinction events occurred in the past, the asteroid impact was the last of the major ones, leaving birds the only living descendants of dinosaurs. Earlier in this episode, we discussed the likely reason why there are no direct references in the Quran regarding dinosaurs. Directly mentioning dinosaurs would be confusing for perhaps 55 generations of Quran readers and could only be understood by the last 2 or 3. However, today some people might have doubts about the Quran for exactly the opposite reason, because it doesn't mention dinosaurs directly, even though dinosaurs were so important in the history of life. They may wonder, if the Quran's author is truly the creator of all life on earth, why didn't he know about dinosaurs? The Quran's answer is impressively stated in Surah Al-Mulk, chapter 67, verses 14 to 19. Verse 14 says, "How could he not know his own creation? For he alone is the most subtle and all-aware. It is he who made the earth tame for you. So walk among its slopes and eat of his provision, and to him is the resurrection." I'll state this verse in Arabic. هُوَ الَّذِي جَعَلَ لَكُمُ الْأَرْضَ ذَلُولًا. The lulan in Arabic comes from the root word dhalla, meaning to lower, humble, make subservient, or tame. Tame? Tame from what? Perhaps the verse is telling us that humans today can walk the earth without fear of monstrous carnivores like the 8.5-meter long Allosaurus, and we can eat from the earth's provisions without competing with gigantic herbivores like the 25-meter long, 58-metric-ton Brachiosaurus. A world with dinosaurs would be daunting for humans. It would not be the lulan, tame. The next three verses segue into descriptions of mass extinction events. Verse 16, "Do you not feel secure that the one who is in the sky will not cause the earth to swallow you up as it quakes violently?" Verse 17, "Or do you feel secure that the one who is in the sky will not unleash upon you a storm of stones? Only then would you know how serious my warning." Verse 18, "And certainly those before had denied as well. Then how severe was my response?" Could the massive earth trembling described in verse 16 refer to the end Permian extinction, where enormous volcanic activity and insurgent earthquakes led to the widespread destruction and laid the foundation for the emergence of dinosaurs? In verse 17, the word hasiben is a storm of stones, and they are from he who rules the sky, evoking the fiery debris and shock waves from the asteroid collision, an actual storm of cosmic rocks that sealed the dinosaurs' fate. Could the verse be referring to the Cretaceous-Paleogene mass extinction by an asteroid? Verse 18 alludes to other mass destructions that came before. And again, scientists today agree that there were at least 5 major mass extinction events on Earth, 1 preceding the asteroid impact and 2 preceding the volcano-driven end Permian extinction. And finally, after describing the conditions that are surprisingly similar to the causes of the rise and fall of dinosaurs that left the earth tame for humans, we have a verse that caps off the story. Verse 19, "Do they not see the birds above them, spreading and folding their wings? None holds them aloft except the most merciful. Indeed, he is of all things seeing." While other traits contributed to the survival of birds, such as small body size, seed-eating beaks, and rapid reproduction, the Quran highlights only one trait: the ability to spread and fold their wings, a feature directly rooted in their dinosaur lineage. Verse 19 tells us that today's birds soar only because of God's mercy, perhaps an acknowledgement of the fact that while their dinosaur ancestors perished, birds were preserved by divine compassion. Triple subhanallah. While the Quran does not mention dinosaurs directly, and for good reason, it is compelling that dinosaurs are likely mentioned in at least 5 indirect or metaphorical ways that together acknowledge their size, strength, numbers, global distribution, lasting fossil records, the circumstances of their rise, evolutionary history, cause of extinction, and their bird descendants. The point of this video is that nearly all of the major scientific milestones in the historical timeline of life are mentioned in the Quran, either directly, indirectly, or metaphorically. Sometimes these mentions tell us what happened, sometimes how it happened, and sometimes just that the milestone is important. Dinosaurs are not directly mentioned in the Quran for good reason. Humans would not have been ready to understand direct references for over 12 centuries. Dinosaurs are likely mentioned in the Quran in at least 5 indirect or metaphorical ways that cover many significant aspects of their existence. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share.